Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Me and Ariel here again. Yes, it is hard to find the time to shoot a video while the baby is asleep or doing something else, because when you live in a one-bedroom apartment, your studio, filming studio, is where the baby sleeps. So we're gonna do it together. Ariel is almost 8 months old. I know she doesn't look like an 8-month-old baby. That's because she's a preemie. And in today's video, I would like to tell you about my pregnancy, because that was a roller coaster from the beginning. I hope you'll find it interesting, and some of the details might be a little bit TMI, so I hope you don't mind that. Otherwise, you want to be true to the story. So let's continue to the video, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So for this video, I made some notes because it's pretty hard to follow and remember everything out of your hand. I was writing a journal every day, so it helped me a lot to go back and find the right dates and all the right details. So I will peek into this from time to time just to be consistent. Okay, so how I found out that I was pregnant. In my previous video, I was talking about how I got pregnant at the age of 38 and a half. So some of the details I already said there, but if you haven't watched the video, I will just, do a quick little recap on how I found out that I'm pregnant. I was struggling with more than 10 years of with unexplained infertility. Yes. And eventually I got pregnant at 38 and a half. And how I found out is that my period was late for like 4 or 5 days. I had some minor cramping and spotting, so I thought that my period is gonna come. Here, you want your soother? There you go. Yeah. So yeah, what I was saying. So June 4th, I took a pregnancy test, and it was a day after I had my visit to the dentist, and I got so many x-rays done on me. Although I knew my period is late and there is a chance that I'm pregnant, but I was like so oblivious to it, and I couldn't think that it can happen. So I just went ahead and did all those x-rays, and literally the day after I decided to take a pregnancy test, which came out positive, and I was so upset with myself for going through all those x-rays that I didn't even have the time to be excited or surprised. All I did is I came to my husband and told him like, oh my god, I'm pregnant, and I did all those x-rays. And he was like, are you kidding me, you're pregnant? So I'm like, yes, but now I sabotaged everything by doing all those x-rays. Right, you will see some small feet over here. Anyway, yeah, so as I said, June 4th, I took my pregnancy test, and it came positive, which was really surprising, and I wasn't expecting it, couldn't believe it, but surprise, surprise, and that happened. So after I found out that I'm pregnant, I still couldn't, believe that it's happening, and I still was expecting my period to come any day now, or to lose the pregnancy any day now. I was taking pregnancy tests literally every day for a week. Every morning I was waking up, taking a test, waiting for my husband to wake up, and it was like the same conversation every morning. Still pregnant, still pregnant. The day after, still pregnant, still pregnant. Both of us were like, really, it was hard for us to believe that I'm actually pregnant. It took us a week of tests, and the lines got darker and darker every day. So for me it was like, oh, this is the proof, I'm actually pregnant. Hey. All right, so at June 11, I went to the bathroom and noticed mild spotting, which I read that it can be normal, but it also can be a beginning of something abnormal. It ranges between just implantation bleeding, or some mild bleeding, even unexplained one, and all the way to miscarriage. that it can be a start of a miscarriage. I didn't feel any cramping or anything abnormal besides that, so I tried to calm myself down and saying everything gonna be okay. So on June 17th, a few days after, was a regular day. I woke up, I went on my run like I did every morning back then. It was a mild run, not something too intense. I was working from home, so I made my breakfast and everything was, you know, just an ordinary day, until suddenly I felt like a gush of liquid coming out, which I couldn't understand what is it. My first thought was probably another pregnancy thing that I don't know yet what it is, but it's normal. I said it's probably normal, but I'll just go and check what's going on. So I went to the bathroom and I just saw a lot of blood. And when I'm saying a lot of blood, I mean period blood, and it was even stronger than my usual period blood. I was so shocked. I literally felt how my heart sinks into my stomach. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I tried not to cry, tried to kind of breathe and calm myself down, but I really didn't know what to do. I was so scared. I came out of the bathroom and I told my husband, listen, we need to go to the emergency room because I bleed a lot. And at that point, I just start crying like crazy and literally bawling my eyes out, which my husband not always agrees with, because in his opinion, a 40-year-old woman needs to know how to deal with shit and not cry every time. But it was so emotional for me that I just didn't know what to do. I was crying like crazy. I started shaking, like I was that nervous. So I called my colleague from work, told her that I have to go to the ER. I wasn't planning telling anyone about my pregnancy, not at work, not my family, nobody, until I know that everything is okay, which in my head was in about 20 week, after the 20-week ultrasound. But I had to tell her, you know, like some details, because I can't just say I have to go. I need to give a reason, and she's a good friend of mine, so I trusted her that she's not gonna tell everybody or will be upset with me or anything like that. Obviously, she was very sympathetic. She said, like, of course, go, just keep me posted on what's happening, what's going on. So my husband drove me to the emergency room in our closest hospital. To my surprise, the hospital was pretty empty. It was very early in the morning, so it was empty, the emergency room, something that I'm not really used to, because usually you see emergency rooms like all full with people and you have to wait for like several hours, not even to be, I know, even to be noticed that you are there. But everyone there were so nice. No, mommy, no. It might be a little bit more challenging than I expected. Let's change positions. Okay. All right. So I got there and everybody were so nice. People were so sympathetic towards me, and they were saying like, don't worry, like we will figure this out, and whatever's happening, it's natural. And anyway, everybody were so nice. The doctor came, they did some blood tests. She didn't check me, which was a little bit strange, but she just asked me some questions. They gave me even pads. I didn't have pads at home because like it was so sudden, and I read that not to use tampons because it can like, I don't know, get infected, or so I didn't even have any pads, so they gave me some pads and told me to wait. They will perform ultrasound and to understand what's happening. I was waiting for 3 hours over there to the ultrasound. Eventually the ultrasound lady called me in, and by then I calmed myself down. Oh, I forgot to mention that I had this bleeding, but I didn't feel any cramping at all. And their first question was always, do you feel any cramps? Do you feel any cramps or any pain? I said, I don't feel anything. I just literally, I feel blood coming out, but nothing besides that. So the ultrasound technician, she didn't, as I said, she didn't disclose any details, but she was very calm and she was smiling, and I wasn't almost worried at all at this point. I accepted that it can go either way. There's nothing for me to do about it, nothing that I done wrong. It's just things happen. So after the ultrasound, she told me to wait for the doctor for the results. She didn't say anything. She just said, like, don't worry and you'll be fine. So I was waiting in the waiting room. It took about an hour and a half until the doctor came, and she called me outside to the street because it was in COVID times, and it was restricted how many people can be in the waiting room. And since there were people who were supposed to go into the hospital, she told me, let's go outside and talk outside so other people were not gonna hear us. We went outside and she told me, listen, everything looks okay. She told me, you are still very early in your pregnancy. She told me I'm 5 weeks and 4 days. So they don't see fetal heartbeat yet. They don't see anything besides what they're supposed to see at this week, which was the yolk and the pregnancy sac. Everything is there, but I am still under threat of miscarriage because I have this bleeding and they don't know why. So I don't get my hopes too high and to come back for another HSG test in 2 days and see where it goes from there. So my husband picked me up. I told him that so far so good. I still bleed like crazy, but I'm still pregnant, which is very strange, but it still can end up in a miscarriage. So we'll just wait and see. So after 2 days, I came back to the hospital. I took another blood test, another HSG test, and it's also like the numbers doubled themselves, and I was still pregnant and the pregnancy was still going. After a day or two, my bleeding subsided. It never went away. I was always bleeding a little bit. Like I still had those spottings and mild bleeding every day. It never went away. So I had the bleeding for a few days and then it subsided. The bleeding never went away. I had mild bleeding during my whole pregnancy, almost my whole pregnancy, but back then I was about 6 weeks and until 8-week ultrasound. I had mild bleedings all the time. So by that point I found an OB who I told her about what's going on, and she looked at my blood test and everything and said nobody knows. I mean, she still doesn't know why I bleed, but I had my 8-week ultrasound coming next, like a few days after. So she said, we'll see in the ultrasound what's going on. This was my first ultrasound to see the heartbeat of the baby. So I was very excited about it. I almost forgot about all those bleeding problems because I said, anyway, I bleed non-stop anyway, so there's nothing I can do about it. As long as it's not heavy bleeding, I'm okay with that. July 8th, I had my 8-week ultrasound. So we started the ultrasound. Deep inside, my heart was racing, I don't know, 200 miles per hour. But the technician, the first thing, she calmed me down. She kind of turned the monitor to me and said, like, look, there's a small heartbeat over there. Oh my God, I felt so relieved. I felt, oh, the baby's there and the baby is alive and the heartbeat is there. I was so relieved, so happy. I saw a tiny kind of peanut over there, some small tiny legs, which was so cute, so adorable. And my husband came, like she went and called my husband at the end of the procedure just to show him the tiny peanut over there. And he said he doesn't see anything. For him it was very hard to see anything on the monitor, but I have those pictures and it's so adorable. All right, so the day after my 8-week ultrasound, I work my regular day, you know, start working, and then I feel a gush of blood again. It was heavy bleeding again. This time I had pads at home, so I ran right away. I already knew the feeling. I ran right away to the bathroom, and it was just gushing blood. I was so upset. I got so nervous, and the only thing I was thinking about is, am I gonna get crampy? Am I gonna get crampy? I thought this time it's gonna be I'm gonna miscarry the baby 100%. Although I saw the heartbeat yesterday, and I read that as soon as you see the heartbeat, then the miscarriage rates are going down. But until about week 16, you are not out of danger zone, and it can happen anytime. So seeing all this blood again at 8 weeks, right after I saw heartbeat, was really heartbreaking. I was like, why is it happening, and why nobody knows? Nobody knows what's going on. I called my doctor. She says, like, do I feel any cramps? And if I start feeling cramps, I will have to go to the ER again. But if I don't, so just monitor myself and try to see where it goes, try to calm myself down. The bleeding subsided a few hours later. Again, it never went away, but I didn't have the strong gash of blood. It just went back to be mild bleeding as it used to be until then, something that I already got used to. So around the same time, I saw an ad at my doctor's office was talking about an IPT test, which an IPT test is the Down syndrome test that you can do a blood test to see if you have your baby in a risk to have Down syndrome. The test itself is not covered by the health insurance, so it's pretty expensive. It's about $700, $800. But there was this study at the University of British Columbia, and they were offering to do the NIPT test for free if you are in the testing group or another placebo group. So I enrolled into the study, and to my surprise, I got enrolled into the study group. So I got the NIPT test for free, but I was happy that I got it for free, and the only thing I was hoping for is that my baby doesn't have any Down syndrome. So from there, I got to my 12-week ultrasound, and I still had bleeding on and off, but I got so used to it so much so that at some point I just stopped being worried that much. So I had my 12-week ultrasound, which again showed a very happy baby. From a peanut, she grew to like a shape of a pear or something like that, and we already saw some small nose and tiny hands, tiny legs, and she was moving. The technician said that everything looks perfectly fine. I told the technician about my bleeding, and she said she doesn't see anything abnormal. She was very nice. She gave me some details, not like the previous one who was silent and didn't say anything. But so yeah, I was in a good mood. I went home. I got a phone call from my doctor, and she says, we reviewed your ultrasound, and it looks like you have subchorionic hematoma, 2 of them. But I guess at 12 weeks, my pregnancy was, my uterus was big enough to actually see something. And they told me, like, there's nothing to be worried about. It's something that happens, and usually it dissolves after first semester, closer to the second semester, and we're just gonna monitor it, and that's it. So I was so happy to finally get some diagnosis to why am I bleeding. It was so I was so relieved. Although I had suspicions that this is what's going on, but it's always nice to get confirmation from a doctor. I mean, somebody who put a seal on it and said, all right, this is the problem. The only thing that it can indicate is that if it's too big and too close to labor, I mean, too close to, you know, when you give birth, so it can lead to premature birth. On August 16, I got my NIPT test back results, and it was negative to Down syndrome, which was so reassuring. I was so happy. And the other thing that they can give you with the NIPT test is telling you the sex of the baby. Now, me and my husband, we were 100% sure we are gonna have a boy. And then when I got the email with the results, and at the end of the email it says 99% female fetus, it took me a few seconds. I was staring at the screen and I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Am I gonna have a girl? I don't know if I was happy or sad or surprised. It's just, I was completely sure that it's gonna be a boy. It took me off guard that I'm gonna have a girl. We even had a name for a boy. I had everything planned. So my husband was working in the other room, and I came out and I told him, like, we are having a girl. And he's like, what? Are you kidding me? Anyways, I wouldn't say I was happy. I was, in some way, I was a little bit upset. I said, like, this is not fair. I was completely sure it's gonna be a boy. Now, and then I felt really shitty about being upset. Anyways, long story short, obviously after a day, I was the happiest person alive. I was so happy that I'm gonna have a little girl. Alright, so after a few days after, on August 26th, I had massive bleeding again. So I went to my doctor, and one thing I understood, that OB-GYNs are the same as any other doctor. They sometimes just don't have time for you. I literally waited for my appointment for 2.5 hours. I was so upset, so upset. And when the doctor came in, she acted like it's absolutely normal. I started to consider switching from to a different doctor or to a midwifery services. I called them, I scheduled a phone appointment because it was still during COVID and they weren't doing face-to-face meetings back then. So I called her and we chat over the phone. I told her about all my pregnancy history so far with the bleedings and all that, and she said, like, well, everything sounds great. If I want, they will accept me. And my due date back then was February 16. They said they have a spot for me if I want to. So after doing some thinking, I decided to switch to midwives from my OB-GYN. And let me tell you, it was the best decision that I made, and they were absolutely amazing. They were absolutely amazing ladies. And the first thing after I switched to midwives is they text me and said, like, well, you told us about your bleeding problems and we suggest you to start taking baby aspirin and calcium. Well, when I heard aspirin, I was like so surprised, because I know aspirin is you know, for blood clots and heart attacks, and I'm like, isn't it dangerous to take aspirin in pregnancy? So they told me, like, the 10 milligrams that I take in a baby aspirin is very low dosage, but it helps if you have bleeding in your pregnancy. So I started taking the aspirin, and literally a day or two after I started, my bleeding stopped completely. I didn't even have any spottings. On October 6th, I had my 20-week ultrasound, which the 20-week was my threshold of telling everyone that I'm pregnant. I haven't told anyone at work besides my colleague back then that I had my first bleeding. We haven't told anything to the family. So after the 20th week ultrasound, that was absolutely normal, everything was normal, they didn't see any hematomas looked like they all, like both of them were gone, and the anatomy scan was great. So we scheduled to tell my family. My family, they don't live in Canada, they live far away in Israel. So we scheduled a phone call with them on the weekend to tell them about that I'm pregnant. So we were thinking about how to do it so it's gonna be in a fun way. At this point I already had like pregnancy clothes because my belly was growing, and I had like pregnancy pants. So my husband, he suggested to tell my parents, like, I just bought some nice clothes and I would like to show you a new pair of jeans that I got, something very cool, and then just show them the jeans with my belly. So when I told them that, they were like so skeptical, like, why am I telling them about the pair of jeans that I bought? But then when I lift up my top and my mom saw the belly, she was so surprised. She was, Anna, are you pregnant? And I'm like, yes. Anyway, they were crying, and there were like a lot of crying, and I was crying, and my dad even was crying. It was very emotional moment, and they got so surprised because I think my mom's mission in life was for me to have children, because I think she almost gave up on her dream. So they were like so surprised, and I felt so great telling everybody about it, and I told everyone at work, and got very nice messages from all of them congratulating me. So everything looked like it's going very well, and the baby's growing, the bleeding stopped. I had negative NIPT test. I mean, everything was going very well from there until I got to week 24. Hi everyone, this is me from the future. While editing this video, I realized that it's way too long, and I decided to separate it and make part 1 and part 2. So part 2 is coming next, so stay tuned, it's going to be very interesting. And if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe if you want more content from me, and I'll see you in part 2.